Hello and welcome to Manorama Yearbook Online. Today we are going to talk about the concept that may seem small at its first glance, but carries a profound constitutional, democratic and ethical significance. Yes, we are talking about a NOTA, that is none of the above. We know that this NOTA, which was introduced officially in 2030, the NOTA allows a voter to reject all candidates contesting in an election while still participating in the electoral process. It is a powerful tool in the hands of the electorate, a way to say, I care about the democracy, but none of these candidates represent my views or values. Now, let's begin with the basis. What is NOTA? We know that this NOTA option in the electronic voting machine, which enable voters to maintain the secrecy of their choice while convey that they do not support any of the listed candidates. It was introduced following judgment by the Supreme Court in a landmark case which is known as People's Union for Civil Liberty versus Union of India case 2030, which held that the voter secrecy is a fundamental right. Here, in this case, the Supreme Court of India directed the Election Commission to include NOTA button to protect this right. But the important point here you should understand, this idea was not a new one in our country. If you try to understand the background, the way back in 1999, the Law Commission of India in its 178th report had explored the possibility of negative voting and suggested that citizens should have the option to reject all candidates. Although no profound recommendation emerged at that time, the debate continued. Here, in fact, the movement gained the momentum when in 2004, the People Union for Civil Liberty filed a petition which claiming that the conduct of election rules 1961 violated the voter secrecy by recording the identity of voters who were abstained. This laid that groundwork for the eventual 2030 Supreme Court judgment. Now, you might ask, what is the effect of the NOTA? If you try to understand the effect and limitation of NOTA, we can say that NOTA provides an option to reject all candidates. It does not, the point here you should understand, the NOTA provides an option to reject all candidates, but it does not affect the result that is. It means the candidate with the highest number of valid votes still win the election even if the NOTA get more votes than any individual candidate. This often raises the question about the actual utility of our none of the above option. However, if you try to understand this none of the above option, I will say this option empower the electorate. It send a message to the party or the person who contesting an election regarding the dissatisfaction and can be form of a protest within the framework of electoral democracy. Now, let's look at the usage trends. If you try to understand the usage trend, I may say the none of the above option was first introduced in 2030 in some assembly election. I think around 5 state assembly election, including Chhattisgarh, Mizoram, Rajasthan, Delhi and Madhya Pradesh. Since then, it has been available in the Lok Sabha also. Not only in the Lok Sabha, state assemblies and the Panchayat election. Though it is available in the local body poll, it will vary across the states. If you try to understand the usage in the Lok Sabha election, particularly in the Lok Sabha election, the share of the NOTA votes has remained low. But if you try to understand, it have a constant ratio. in 2040 election, it was the none of the above option. Their usage was 1.1 percentage. And if you try to understand in 2090, it was 1.04 percentage. And this similar trend continued in the recent Lok Sabha election, which was held in last year in 2024. However, in some state assemblies, some state assembly elections, the percentage has been higher. Especially if you look on the data, you can see that was higher in Bihar and the Gujarat. It is in Bihar, it was in 2.48 percentage, and in Gujarat, it was 1.8 percentage, which was reflecting that the significant voter dissatisfaction in the certain constituency. Now, let's now turn into some of the key judicial pronouncement related to the none of the above option. Apart from the People Union of Civil Liberty judgment, we must also note that Lily Thomas versus Speaker of Lok Sabha 1993 case, where the Supreme Court ruled that the right to vote include right to remain neutral. And in the later time, in Shailisha Mumbai Premar versus Election Commission of India case that was held in 2080, the Supreme Court of India made a crucial distinction. It held that the NOTA option is not as suitable for indirect election such as those in the Rajya Sabha. The court reasoned that allowing NOTA in such election could distort the process and which encouraged the corruption and which led to the political disaffections. As a result, the NOTA was withdrawn from Rajya Sabha election. Now, let's look beyond that. If you try to understand, several countries have adopted this similar mechanism. If you try to understand in Europe, the nation like Finland, Spain, Sweden, France, Belgium, and one more country called the Greece, they allow the voters to cast a blank or a null votes, similar to our none of the above option. And other country, for example, the United States. Here, one of the important point has an exam point of view you should understand. The United States, while there was not a formal NOTA button, many states allow write-in votes, where voters can write none of the above or any other name has a symbolic protest. Like you can mention your name if you are a citizen of America. And other example, like countries like Colombia, Ukraine, Brazil, even Bangladesh also offer the NOTA-like option. Now, what is the current debate about? If you try to understand the current debate that is happening in our country, recently, the Vidhi Center for Legal Policy filed a public interest litigation in the Supreme Court, which they are seeking to make NOTA a compulsory feature in all elections, which they were saying that they were talking to including those with only a single candidate. So the play raised an important constitutional question about the voter autonomy and the democratic accountability. Now, let's explore the argument in favor of compulsory NOTA inclusion. First, I will say it expands the voter choice. Means allowing the voters to reject all candidates while still participating in the democratic process. Second, it ensures the voter agency even in uncontested elections, where otherwise a voter is left with no meaningful choice. Third, it can promote a political accountability, means forcing the parties to nominate more ethical and competent candidate, fearing that poorly chosen candidate may derive voters to none of the above option. Fourth, a rising none of the above option count can act a signal to the election commission and political party that voters are disillusioned, which promoting a cohesive reform. Some political expert even suggested going for further if NOTA cross a certain threshold, says we can say for example 10%, a re-election should be mandated and parties should be held accountable. However, there are also some arguments against the compulsory inclusion of NOTA. One of the practical impact is negligible. The candidate with the most votes still win, regardless of NOTA tally. 2. It reserves the constituency. There has been instance where high NOTA votes may reflect caste-based bias rather than genuine dissatisfaction. 3. It encourages the voter empathy where voters it may encourage voter empathy where voters casually reject all candidates without careful consideration. And 4, if NOTA becomes the symbolic without electoral consequence, it could undermine the public trust in the system and weaken the foundation of representative democracy. So here, what should be a way forward? There we can say that there is a strong case for a legislative reform. States like Maharashtra and Haryana have already taken a step ahead by treating NOTA as a fictional candidate. They have allowed for fresh election when NOTA wins more voters than any candidate. Additionally, reforms could include barring the candidate who polled fewer votes than NOTA form, recontesting and holding the parties financially accountable for forcing the repeating elections. In such pre-polls, the NOTA could even be disabled to prevent indefinite cycles. At the same time, we need a widespread voter education campaign, which means the citizen must understand that the NOTA is not just a button, the citizen must understand that NOTA is not just a button to press in frustration. It is a mechanism to hold the system accountable. Finally, the NOTA should be seen as part of the broader electoral reforms like decriminalizing our politics, improving the infra-party democracy, and increasing the transparency in political funding. In conclusion, the NOTA represents more than just a protest. It is an evolving democratic instrument. Its strength lies not in rejecting the system, but in the demanding better choice within. So, thank you for watching Manorama Yearbook Online. Keep learning, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep voting with awareness.